Welcome back. I trust that your LinkedIn network's already growing, so in this lesson we're going to start nurturing those new connections using the scripts we created earlier. If you refer back to the sequence in the blueprint, you'll recall that we wait 3 weeks in between each message once we've thanked our new connection. We're not worried about it being exactly 3 weeks, but you should try to match that cadence within a couple of days in either direction, and in no case should you send a subsequent message in less than 2 weeks. The great thing about the missing link setup is that you can really invite and thank new connections as frequently as you like, but you can handle the rest of the nurturing sequence in a single day each week. You don't have to impose such a time limit if you have plenty of time on your hands, but we find that this is the most efficient way to run the program. Before digging in, let's cover a few general considerations. First, every persona is different when it comes to the amount they work, their speed in replying, and the days and times of the week that they're least bogged down and most responsive. It will be your job to intuit those factors based on your experience. Make some initial assumptions or guidelines based on your current understanding and experience with your persona, but be sure to refine that understanding with testing over time. Vary your outreach times. Especially when it comes to sharing public content in your newsfeed, it's important to post like a human, which means naturally varying days and times. But even with your sequences, adjusting the days and times will allow you to better test the most successful periods for your personas. All that said, know that according to Sprout Social, the average best time for LinkedIn engagement is between 3 and 5 p.m. Central Time on Wednesdays. Other top engagement times, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central Time on Tuesdays, 10 a.m. to noon Central Time on Wednesdays, and 1 to 3 p.m. Central Time on Thursdays. Obviously, if your persona is restricted to a specific time zone, you could adjust these times to remove the nationwide average. Remember that you can reasonably expect to handle your outreach one day each week, and even that can easily be limited to a few hours unless you have plenty of time on your hands and want to maximize the volume of leads you generate. We make the assumption, though, that you're pretty busy, and I can assure you that you can generate some amazing results, treating this as a very part-time effort. Let's run through an example scenario where I'm jumping into my own pipeline on my preferred day of the week, which we'll say is Wednesday based on the metrics I just provided. The first thing I'm going to do to nurture the connections I've already generated is pull up HubSpot and jump into the contact screen. From here, the saved searches we set up during our CRM customizations will do most of the work for us. Because we have 4 real nurturing messages after the initial thank you response, I can pull up the connections within each group and process them in batch. The first thing I'm going to do is click on All Saved Filters. And whether it's created by me or created by others, you're going to see a list of our relevant filters. For the first one, I'm going to click on LinkedIn Sequence 1, which is people who are waiting for the unaffiliated resource tip script. When I click on that, it's going to filter the view, and you can see based on last LinkedIn script, so this is the last message they were sent, with all of these being connection thank you, that all of the people in this list would then be waiting for the unaffiliated resource tip message. So let's start by running through the columns that we have available to us for these contacts. We have the contact name, company name. Let me scroll over and look at these all at once then. The last LinkedIn script that was sent to this person. So in this case, it was the connection thank you script. We also have a column for the last warm call script. Keep in mind the warm call sequence is coming up later in these lessons. Then our last script date, which means for the last LinkedIn script or warm call script, what was the date that we used it or sent it? We then have lifecycle stage, and anyone who's in the LinkedIn sequence will be a marketing qualified lead. And then we have our LinkedIn profile link for each contact, as well as the LinkedIn Messenger link for each contact. Lastly, we have the contact donor, which in this case is me across the board. So because I want to send all of these people the unaffiliated resource tip message next, what I'm going to do is come over here and I want to open up the messenger link for each one of these contacts so that I can paste that message in. But here's the key. Notice that at the bottom of the page, I can change the pagination from 25 contacts per page to 50 or 100. Now let's say I have 150 contacts who are part of this particular filter, so they're waiting on the unaffiliated resource tip. What I could do is change this to 25 per page so that it's only showing 25 at once, and then I can open the messenger link for all 25 of those in a method that I'll show you here momentarily. I wouldn't want to necessarily open all 125 of my contacts because doing so could put undue burden on my browser and my computer. So I could run into performance problems. But opening up 25 tabs typically is going to work just fine. Now before we do that here, I'm going to further filter our results. You'll see that every one of our saved filters includes a date field. If we click on that, this is where we can choose a date that we want to have as the cutoff for whomever we want to include in this. Now again, because we don't want to send this to anybody in less than 3 weeks or so, we want to make sure that we set this date to something that's about 3 weeks in the past. So the last script date, or in this case that means when we sent these people the thank you follow-up, we want that to be at least 3 weeks ago. So I'm going to click on this. This happens to be very far in the future. So I'm going to click today first just to get it really close. Then I'm going to click on this again, and I can see that today is the 16th, and I want to go back 3 weeks. So that would be the 9th, the 2nd, go back to July, and then the 26th. So I click on 26th, update filter, and you can see that it's now filtered so that I only have 2 results in here. Everybody else was sent the thank you message too recently. I should not be emailing them again yet. So what I'm going to do here is open up the tabs for each one of these contacts so that I can send them the next message in the sequence. The easiest way to do that is to use the LinkedIn Messenger link. Now, you'll notice that these are truncated with these ellipses, but the real link is actually behind there. So all I need to do is triple click 1, 2, 3, and it's going to select that entire thing. I can then right click and say go to address in new tab. This happens to be in Mac Safari. The terminology that you might see could be a little bit different if you're using Chrome or another browser. So I'll do the same thing for the next one. Triple click, right click, go to address in new tab. And then you'll notice that once I've opened up all of my tabs here, each one of them has a direct link into my message history with that particular contact. So what we do is come over to our Blueprint spreadsheet, go to the unaffiliated resource tip field, and we're going to copy Command-C or Control-C, that particular message. Then we're going to go to each of the new tabs that we opened, paste, so Control-V or Command-V, and we're going to be sure to replace prospect name with the name of our contact, as well as any other dynamic fields that you have in your particular message. Then we'll send, we'll go to the next one, paste, update, send, and after you send each one, you can close those respective tabs. Now, once you've completed an entire chunk, so in my case, just 2, in your case, maybe it's 25 because you're doing pages of 25 contacts each. Let's scroll back over here, and we need to update all of these records to say what we just did. So the easiest way is going to be to check the box at the top, and that'll select all of our contacts. We're going to click Edit, and then we're going to update that LinkedIn script. So I'm going to start to type LinkedIn, and here it is, last LinkedIn script. Now for these people, it was the thank you message, but now we just sent the unaffiliated resource tip. So I'm going to choose that and click Update. I'm going to edit again, and this time I'm going to choose the script date. So it's called last script date, and I'm going to put in today's date and click Update. If you had pagination, you could then click on Next, go to the next 25, and process those in turn. As you can see, doing it this way keeps all of these contacts very updated in the system so that anytime I can go into any contact record and understand exactly what they're due for. It also really streamlines the process of sending out new messages from the sequence in bulk because of our saved filters. Now, when you first get started, you're only going to have to process these for the next sequence after the thank you, which would be the unaffiliated resource tip. As time goes on and you push these people farther through your funnel, you're going to have to go through in multiple batches and take care of everybody who needs to get the unaffiliated resource tip and the people who are supposed to get the tap group discussion and so on. It's important to acknowledge that your LinkedIn nurturing scripts are the standard path for your connections. As I mentioned before, however, some connections will respond to your messages in ways that break the natural flow of the sequence, so you'll need to understand how to deal with those situations. Such a scenario can and often does happen as early as in the connection acceptance response. While most of your connections will probably approve your invitation with a simple click of the accept button, some may actually reply to you with a friendly message. If it's just a friendly, glad to connect response, again, you should reply with an equally personal thank you instead of using your standard script. If the thank you interaction goes beyond simple pleasantries, though, you may need to handle the connection differently. The main thing you need to always do in these situations is simply be cognizant of how appropriate the upcoming message sequence will be for the connection. Will the scripts you've created still sound natural and relevant in the coming weeks? Custom responses are a great opportunity to make it very clear that this is a real one-on-one conversation. So the last thing you ever want to do is give a strong impression that you're actually a robot. Examples of some of these situations include: you invite them to your tap group early and they join. In this case, sending them the tap group discussion later might sound out of place. They engage with a blog, article, video, or other resource that you reference in message 3 before you send them message 3. Or maybe they ask a lot of questions about your expertise and you provide enough value that the logical next step is to chat by phone. If a connection ever replies to a message in a way that just makes part of your nurturing sequence illogical, you can either make manual adjustments in whatever way makes the most sense for that situation, or you can skip the remainder of the sequence and fast-track that connection to the warm call sequence. That sequence is outlined in an upcoming lesson. In those cases where your timing's so perfect that the connection responds with something like, "Hi Rob, I see you build websites. Do you guys work with nonprofits by chance? We have an RFP I could share with you if you're interested." It will definitely make sense to exclude them from the rest of the LinkedIn sequence and move them to the warm call sequence. Remember that the main purpose of the LinkedIn nurturing is to establish rapport before putting on your sales hat. This helps you to be more successful when you do get into sales conversations. In those instances where the rapport comes quickly and easily, though, it's okay to occasionally fast-track the connection. The key, though, is to always move at their pace. Now that we know how to advance connections through the one-on-one LinkedIn sequence, it's time to talk about content sharing and engagement across a larger group. So I'll see you in the next lesson.